who are concerned, as I always am, I did check Wolfram Alpha, and it does integrate under the curve of ultraviolet exposure, and so it'll tell you how many minutes or seconds it would be to be sunburned. And we're totally fine, because the sun elevation is only about 39.5 degrees. Yeah. You're welcome. It's a bit concerned fine. So next we have a talk from the email sender he described himself as, currently known as Z. He wouldn't let me pronounce his actual name. Thank you, Nick. Hello, everybody. My name is Z. If you've been to a reception on Sunday at Apiary, I was your bartender, so I hope you enjoy the drinks we had there. And today I would like to talk about what I think matters the most when we are writing documentation and we are describing systems. So as I said, I work at Apiary. I feel a little introduction might be appropriate. So what Apiary does is we essentially provide tools for people to design and think about APIs. We are a set of hosted tools to facilitate design of APIs and systems. And our big hope is to get sort of everybody who is involved in the API design and development of an API to the table and discuss the API. So that means architects, developers, stakeholders, and the writers, of course, because we believe that if you discuss what you are about to create, if you are going to discuss the design together, you come up with better designs, and the result is a better API or a better system. Also, as you can see, we are on top of the latest trends in doing presentations, so we use emojis. Please don't tell our designers. I promise these two are the last two emojis you will see in this presentation. So when I talk about the documentation of system, what I really mean is the documentation of its interface. When you are documenting a system, you are probably not documenting how it works inside. What is inside, what are the bits in the system. You are documenting and describing what the users are interacting with, what is the interface to them. So throughout this talk, when I be referring to documentation of a system or API, please think of it as the same thing. It's interface to a computer system. That's good to be said. That I'll be talking more about the computer systems than any other system and their interfaces and how they are perceived by users. Now at Apiary we have quite a few APIs. We have over 170 case APIs. That's a lot of documentations, and I've seen quite a few documentations to ask this question: what is the documentation? And I know it would be like, oh gee, you are asking me at the almost end of this conference what the documentation is. Well, please bear with me. This is what I learned. Today, when people think about documentation, they think of it as a marketing tool to drive the adoption. The documentation is most often marketed as a tool that will help users to use your system, to use your library, to use your API. And we are actually living in an age where sign-ups counts, where stars are what is important, where downloads is what matters the most. We are living in the world where this is the mantra, where our mantra is to move fast and break things. The documentation today are designed to sort of funnel the users into your systems to get those solves, to get those downloads, to get those sign-ups. And I think this is the reason why we ended up with so much broken things, right? This is today with the cheap computing power, everybody can program. To program doesn't cost much. To create a software is actually sort of cheap, much cheaper than it was before. We are in an age where people are programming first before they start thinking, and as they are programming, they realize, oh wait, maybe this is not working, maybe I need to think about what I was actually doing. And documentation today is reflecting just that, and I think this is wrong. I think we should treat documentation as something completely different than a marketing tool that drives adoption. I would like to shift our minds and propose that the documentation is a thinking tool. It helps people to think about the systems. It is essentially a representation of a system. When a creator creates a system, he or she will describe that system in a compressed form, in the form of a documentation. And the user or reader of the documentation, at the other end, is decompressing that information that was put into documentation into sort of build a mental map of what the system is, what the system has to offer. So I can think what I can do with the system. So essentially, a documentation is a medium to help us think about the system. It is a thinking tool, not just a marketing tool. And you might be like, alright, so what is wrong with the current documentation? Why? How come it is not a thinking tool as it is today? Well, what I see wrong with most of the documentation today, it is actively hiding what matters. The very important parts are obfuscated and burdened under unimportant technical details. Under things that doesn't matter, under things that are designed to be there to help you get quickly in, to get to the sign up, to like the library, to use it really quickly before you even know what is inside for if you want to use it. Well, you know just how to use it, but you don't know what it is, what is inside for you. Now, if you look at what the documentation today is mostly composed of, and this is for web APIs. This is really mainly details about the protocol, probably HTTP, which was already described and explained so many times somewhere else. It is about authentication, pagination, rate limiting, how to contact lawyers, and maybe what the creator of the documentation thought you want to do with the system. And only under all this irrelevant information, because nothing there tells you what is the system, what you can do with it, what you can find there, you might find, it's here, it really illustrates what it is, it's the data and what you can do with them. Now I want to illustrate this on GitHub's example. I just realized there might be people from GitHub here, so I really love it. This is probably not the best idea, but then another example was a Twitter or Heroku, and that wouldn't work here either. So sorry, I really love GitHub, and this is just this is just a representation of what I'm talking about. So please, don't throw anything at me. So the GitHub documentation, if you go to overview, and you might not read it, that doesn't matter really. I'll just quickly walk through it. You can see something about the current version, a schema, parameters, root endpoints, client errors. Here, HTTP redirects, HTTP verbs. Well, this is the protocol thing. I still have no idea what is in the GitHub system. Something about authentication. Something about hypermedia, pagination, and rate limiting. If I make calls to do something, I'm probably going to be rate limited, but I still do not know what I'm going to make calls for. What is this? Why I'm making the calls? And this is the overview, and so on and so on. This is the overview. If you finish it to the very end, you still have no idea what's the business here. This is a lot of good reading, and don't get me wrong, this is necessary to use the API, but it doesn't give you any information on what is there for you and what you can do with it. Now, I'm a human, and as a human, I'm the ultimate semantic machine. I'm like the semantic beast as you are. I can figure out that, hey, this is a GitHub. There are some things like repositories and source code and users and comments. So there must be something like that, right? So I can see a repositories here. If I click on that, I get to a repositories documentation, and here it's becoming really more interesting what is inside. I can see that I can list our repos, or my repos. I can list the user repos. I can list organization repos. This is great, except you still do not know what the repo is. Did anybody tell you somewhere what the repo is, what the data are there? No. Well, you can list it. That's cool. So how do I find what the repo is? Oh, look at that. That's a JSON This is what repo is. This is what makes GitHub great and unique. This is, ladies and gentlemen, what matters. This is the data. And you are faced with this, and you are going to interact with that. Is authentication, rate limiting, or pagination a business of GitHub? No, it is not. This is what matters. And it's hidden, it's laying down here in a JSON blob that is not documented really well or at all. So, and again, this is not the case of GitHub. This is just one demonstration. If you go to a Twitter API documentation, you would see the same. Now, how do we make this better? How can we document the system then? Well, the fundamental thing is we should be thinking about what are we documenting. We should be documenting the what, not how. You know, the tutorials are nice, but they are already narrowing your thinking. Tutorials are about technical details, how you do something when you know the something. But it doesn't help you to think about a system, what is inside. It just narrows you to one particular thing. So, what are the things we should document? This is the data in the first place. This is what makes you unique. This is your unique, value as a company or a project or a framework or a library. You should be saying what a repo is, what a user is, what a GitHub issue is, what a comment is, what a tweet is, this kind of thing. What are the data, what they mean if they appear somewhere. That's the most important part of the system. Together with what you can do with the data. There is a user, I can follow the user, what it means. That's the important thing there, explaining what it means. And if you have been here yesterday, this goes back to what Emily was talking about, and that's the vocabularies and basically definition of domain semantics. This is what matters. You should get people in your project organization to talk together, writers, stakeholders, developers, to talk together, sit and decide what is the semantics of my domain. What is my application about? What I can do with the data? Authentication and rate limiting doesn't matter really. And if you get the people to the table, you will figure out that they may be often arguing what chair is, what the door is, and what all these things are. But at the end of the day, when you sort these things out, you will get to understand the system from the inside and outside. It will help to create the good designs of the system, both internal and external, so users can interact with it. And this results fundamentally in the systems that can last longer, that can be evolved, and that scales better. And hopefully, in the near future, this will result in the machine interoperability, where machines will be able to figure out what they can do with the system based on the semantics meaning of those things. Unlike today, where human intervention is needed to sort of, wire the meanings together. So, I would like to close with this idea that really shook me to the ground. There was this really famous mathematician, Richard Hemming, who said that similarly to odors we cannot smell and sounds we cannot hear, there might be thoughts we cannot think, right? And Brett Victor extends on that similar to microscope that enable us to see things we couldn't see before, there might exist a medium that enables us to think about things we couldn't think before. Now, is this documentation as a thinking tool or thinking medium, this medium to help us with thinking something we couldn't before? Probably not. But as a platform for thinking, I think this can get us as a humans further because this will encourage the creativity and enforce the remix culture where you understand the systems and you can think about what you can do with the system. Thank you.
So we are running ahead. ahead, which is awesome. One of our co-founders just left the room, but okay, there he goes. Eric would like to come up and talk a little bit about Read the Docs. That was the pre-anti-penultimate talk of this conference. The next is the penultimate talk of the conference. We already had no, that was just the anti-penultimate.
No, this is the anti-penultimate.
So, yeah, Eric will talk for a couple of minutes, and then the next speaker, please